listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
What's up and welcome along to the Straight to Video podcast. Hope all is okay with everyone out there. Now this is a special chat on today's show for me as I got to catch up with my friend Scotty Dunbar. The two of us met back in 2006, that's like 15 years ago, when my old band Teenage Casket Company was doing a tour of the East Coast in the USA. We were out on what for me, whilst only small club shows, it was a super big deal as we were out playing on a metal sludge tour, which is one of my favourite websites run by Stevie Rochelle from the band Tough. On the bill alongside us were our lifelong friends the Erotics, a kick-ass new band causing a buzz called Veins of Jenna, and at the end of each show, Stevie Rochelle himself would get up and do some classic Tough songs. So 4 shows into the tour, we were playing in a town called Pittsfield, and this would be the night we met Scotty, his best friend Leanne, and for myself and Rob Wild from TCC, this would seriously, especially in 2006, we would have our minds blown to meet people pretty much the same age with the love and passion for exactly the same bands we'd grown up loving. No one we could find was talking about Trickster or Danger Danger with the same energy as we all could. We all became fast friends that night. What follows is simply a chat with a couple of mates catching up, but Scotty has been on a crazy journey which I thought would be interesting to share with you all. Scotty is one of the biggest hard rock fans I know, with the same passion for it which he's always had, but his road hasn't always been the most straightforward. I was stunned when I learned he was part of the audience that attended the deadly Station Club fire of 2003, whilst during a performance by the band Great White, pyrotechnics would catch hold and cause a fire which burned down the club, resulting in the loss of 100 lives. Scotty revisits that night for us, and it's a tough, heartbreaking listen, but it's also inspiring to hear how he's pulled himself out the other side of such tragedy to be in a good place today. I think if you're a die-hard music fan, which I'm sure a lot of you are out there, you'll remember the feeling you had when you first discovered music or your favourite band. Perhaps the excitement of your very first show, maybe meeting the band. Scotty Dunbar encompasses all that to this day, and it's very infectious. If you want to reach out to Scotty or find out more about his music, then check out his own personal Facebook page or through Instagram at Scotty Dunbar. Before we get into the chat, I want to remind you all that our friends at Dead Skull Coffee, who are a great independent rock and roll coffee company, are offering listeners to this show 15% off any order placed on their website. Simply go to deadskullcoffee.co.uk, fill your shopping basket and then enter the promo code STV on checkout to grab the discount. Or if you listen to the show at stvpod.com, then just click on their logo in our banner and that skull-crushing discount will be entered when you check out. So on with the show, get ready to feel like a kid again and seeing your first ever live gig, queuing up to grab your favourite band's new album, or even signing up to their fan club as I welcome my mate Scotty Dunbar to the Straight to Video podcast.
This time around I'm gonna make it lasting. One shot is all that I've got. I'm never gonna stop. I'm gonna give it all that I've got, yeah. I'm gonna take it straight to the top as it's my life, my rules, not yours. I'm not gonna lose, yeah. Good times is what I live for.
Let's start from the beginning. Are your family all from like the East Coast, Massachusetts area?
Yeah, I grew up right outside of Boston, about 10 minutes from the city itself, in a town called Woburn. And yeah, it's a cool location because, like I said, it's like 10 minutes from the city. I've been here my whole life, except for, I've moved out from this area a couple times and gone up to New Hampshire and tried out some new places and stuff. But I think I'm pretty settled now, like living in this town.
Yeah. Is that where you are now? You're in Woburn now?
Yes, I'm in Woburn now. It's a good location because I can get right down into the heart of Boston in like 10 minutes.
So you've been to the UK before, so you know how different it is. So give us a bit of a rundown of what it was like growing up there. How did you like spend your summers and stuff like that?
During the summers and stuff, like in Boston, the summertime's my favorite time of year because that's when you get like a lot of the outdoor shed shows. And then, my favorite venue of all time is in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. It's called the Casino Ballroom. So, and they just have shows all summer long. It's just the coolest atmosphere. It's like on a beach boardwalk. And then as far as like other stuff, passed down through my family through the years, they have like a little cabin. All my aunts and uncles and cousins share. Go there on the weekends and stuff if I wasn't working.
What kind of stuff was you into as a kid?
Well, you know what? When I was a kid, I was into sports, but I really wasn't. I kind of like pretended. I played hockey and stuff. Like I was god awful. But like that was my dad's thing. But once I got a gist of rock and roll, I started working early. I was able to get a job working on a farm at 13. And that's when I was able to save money. So when I went to shows with my dad, like could buy t-shirts and tour books and all the good stuff.
Yeah.
My life really changed when I was 12 and my dad brought me to see David Lee Roth, Cinderella, and Extreme. And that was it. That's what the whole snowball effect.
You was into music before then, though, weren't you? Though, because like Michael Jackson's been like a big thing for you, like pretty much all your life, right?
I gotta back it up. I got into like a real crony singer called Mitch Miller and the Gang, and then I was into like Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra, but that was from my grandmother,
right?
And that was my first exposure to music. And then my cousins had gotten me into Michael Jackson. I love Michael when I was a little kid. I still love him to this day. I mean, great music, one of the best entertainers of all time. But what really transpired was when my cousin Kristen had a tape and it was Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet. So when I got Bon Jovi's Slippery When Wet, I borrowed it from her and I had never heard anything like that.
Had you like heard the stuff on the radio, or did you just like get attracted to the album cover, or what was it?
You know what? It wasn't necessarily the MTV side yet because I wasn't really introduced to that. As far as watching MTV, that came very shortly after, but it was. My cousin had posters on her wall of like Bon Jovi from like the 16 magazines and, stuff like that. And I was like, who are these like cool looking dudes? So yeah, Bon Jovi, they're still my favorite bands to this day.
What did you think of the music when you heard it though? Did it kind of match up with the imagery which you were seeing? Or was it just like, holy shit, what is this?
It was something that I had never heard before. And it just completely changed my life.
I've said it before, like hearing Bon Jovi, I mean, I was the same as you. I just loved pop music up until the point where it was Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, but I remember hearing Bon Jovi and it was, to me back then, it was almost like the heaviest thing, which sounds crazy now. It was almost like the heaviest thing I'd heard, but so melodic as well. And I was like, this is just amazing.
And I was the same way as you because, like I was saying before, the only artist I had heard was Michael Jackson. And then before that, it was, Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra. So taking Bon Jovi to like Frank Sinatra, it's almost like death metal, So it was like something I never heard before. And then when I heard it, shortly after that, I got exposed to like MTV.
Okay.
And then seeing all the videos.
There's more bands like this.
Yes, exactly. It's like at first I thought Bon Jovi was like the only one. Like they were like the special one. But then I got into like Motley Crue and Def Leppard and all those bands, Cinderella, Rat. It was eye-opening.
It was game over, wasn't it, mate? It was game over.
Yeah, exactly. And then you would go into the grocery store or wherever, and you would see all these magazines, like Metal Edge and Hit Parader and Circus and Rip and the whole store was pretty much taken over by these rock magazines. Like you even had like, Metal X, Rock Beats, like the list was endless. So my grandmother would be like, all right, you can pick out two. And that was very tough. So I would always go for the Metal Edges and the other one, whether it be a Hit Parade or something. As long as they had like Bon Jovi or Poison or Kiss on the cover, I was good. But Metal Edge was the way to go because remember how the covers were? And they would have like 30 bands on the cover.
Every band you love was in there every month, even if it was just like a little quarter page.
Oh, yeah, it was great. And they always had like the Rock on the Rise section and stuff. What kids don't understand these days is when you bought like a cassette tape or a CD, most of the time you were taking a chance on it. You were going by the look and the cover because a lot of these bands you didn't hear on the radio. You were exposed to them, from the pages of Metal Edge. You took that chance. I remember seeing an ad for Tough. And I was like, whoa, these guys look so cool. So they had a thing for their fan club, and it was called Tough Muff Mania. All right. So before the album even came out, I joined their fan club. I had no idea what they sounded like because the album wasn't out yet. So when it came out, my parents took me into Boston, and we went to the Hard Rock Cafe. And then afterwards, we went over to a Sam Goody. And I was able to get, what comes around goes around.
I love that.
Yeah, that's a, solid album, with Howard Benson producing. It was just, I just thought that was so cool, With Tough, with the fan club, I used to get the packages in the mail. Keep in mind, I was 11, 12 years old or whatever. And, the stamp would say Tough Muff Mania. And little did I didn't know what muff was then.
Stevie Rochelle knew what he was on with.
Yeah.
He got it figured out.
That was a big thing. So Metal Edge, rest in peace, Jerry Miller. And going with Metal Edge, a very, very important thing was before there was social media or internet or all that, when grunge had come in, a lot of the other publications, every once in a while you would get a write-up on a bigger band like Motley Crue or something like that. But as far as Metal Edge goes, Jerry stuck to her guns, and later Paul Gargano. They covered these bands, and that was really the only way you could figure out what was going on. Like if Danger had a new album coming out, Warrant had a new album coming out, Slaughter, the list is endless. You could find out what was going on with these bands by reading that magazine. So what Jerry did at that magazine is basically for all the people that love that music, that was the only way you could find out about it.
Yeah, she kept that flame burning for much longer than everybody else, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then that, like I said, that was before social media and stuff like that. Crazy times.
So was all your friends into the same stuff as well? Or was you the odd kid out?
No. I was the odd kid out for sure. So when I was younger, like in elementary school, I remember, Poison and Warrant were the thing. And it was almost like a division. Like if you were on the Poison side, you were really cool. If you were on the Warrant side, you were cool, but there wasn't as many of you. And so, of course, I love Poison, but I wanted to be more of the outsider. So I joined the Warrant crew. Like on recess and stuff, we listened to, somebody would bring their boombox and it'd be like, boombox wars. You have Poison on one side of the playground, then you would have Warrant on the other side of the playgrounds. I remember one day I had like my cassette player, and inside of it I had Bon Jovi's New Jersey, which is my favorite album of all time. And I had the cassette in there. And the usual school bully, he came up, he's like, what are you listening to? And he took the tape out, and it was, New Jersey. And he's like, that's girls' music. He's like, if you want to be tough and stuff, you got to listen to Poison.
Amazing.
I remember as clear as day, because remember those really big buttons they used to have?
Yeah.
So he used to have like a big, one of those big Poison buttons, and then a couple of the metal ones and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my elementary school experience. Going on, it's, in junior, like high school, you're getting into the 90s. I had a couple friends that would like listen to the stuff I did, but once I was in high school, it was like a no-no. That's when Winger was like front and center on like, with Stewart from Beavis and Butthead, like, wearing like a Winger t-shirt. Grunge really came into effect, but we did have some exceptions. Like my friends would let me listen to Tesla and a few Great White tunes. And that was basically it.
Where did you used to buy your music from? You mentioned Sam Goody, but did you have like a local record store?
Yes, Tower Records. I had a Tower Records that was like a town over from here in a town called Burlington. That's where I used to get all my stuff. And they were also open at midnight. So it's like back when albums used to come out on Tuesdays, like if there was, say, like, Poison were putting out, it didn't matter who it was, but I would always go on midnight to get like my new CDs. And then they would have the magazines and the videos and all that stuff.
You mentioned, you touched on it briefly earlier, your first gig was, I think this is super cool, your dad took you in 1991 to see the insanely good lineup of David Lee Roth, Cinderella and Extreme, and that's considered probably one of the last great tours of the era. Certainly one where there was a noticeable difference in the crowd size due to the rising popularity of the music coming out of Seattle, and I think that tour got cancelled partway through, mainly because of that.
It did.
I'm sure you have very different memories of that show, though.
Of course I do. It's like, because to me, as a kid, I didn't know any better. There were people there. So I wasn't like, when you're a kid, you're not like looking at the numbers game and stuff.
How old would you have been at that time though, mate?
I was just about to turn 12.
Wow. That's
when it was just like, Extreme came on. I had Porn Graffiti, and then Cinderella came on, and I was just, Tom Kiefer just, coming out. I remember he had like a red scarf, and like the band just looked so cool, and they rocked. And then when David Lee Roth came on, he was like riding like one of those big stuffed microphones, and I'm like, I'd never seen anything like that. So David Lee Roth became my king. I know there's like bootlegs and stuff floating around there from the particular show I went to, but I won't watch it because I don't want to taint anything, because to me it's like so special. It's like, that was my first show. So it's like, I don't like, even if somebody was, that was to be, released on, something, if it ever was, not like it would ever be, but I wouldn't be able to watch it.
Was that a show you wanted to go to, or did your dad say, hey, let's check this gig out?
Oh, yes. No, I wanted to go because I had just gotten, this is funny because it ties back to the sports. I went to go see a hockey game, but, they had a record store downstairs, like in like the little mall, like food court area. So I could care less about the hockey game. And my father's best friend, Jim, brought me in, and I came out with, David Lee Roth's A Little Ain't Enough. And I didn't know about Van Halen yet. I was going by the video I saw on MTV, which was the A Little Ain't Enough video. All the Marshall stacks great, and the cool cars and the chicks, So I was going by that. And then obviously afterwards I got that album. My dad was like, hey, David was in this band called Van Halen. And my dad got me a copy of Van Halen 2 to start with. Not Van Halen 1, but Van Halen 2.
Working you in easy.
Yes. So, I was just blown away. And Rock definitely, opened up those floodgates. But before going to an actual live show, one major big event for me, I remember sitting around watching it with my mom and my dad. And it was a couple years before. So I was even younger. And it was the Moscow Music Peace Festival. We had rented that. They rented it because Bon Jovi was on it. Then getting to see, Motley Crue and Ozzy and Cinderella and Skid Row, the Scorpions, and Gorky Park from Russia. So that whole thing, it was just like unreal.
Everything happened around 1991. What was your reaction to like the Seattle movement back then? Did you find bands you liked from that and like, oh, it's a bit different, but I kind of dig it? Or was you a bit pissed off because it was harder to find out what your favorite bands were doing?
It wasn't until around you know, 93, 94, that every magazine changed their format except for Metal Edge. So I remember I used to remember with the VHSs, like you would have to like tape like Headbangers Ball or something. So because you get grounded if you were up that long. So I would tape Headbangers Ball on a Saturday night. And I remember you would be able to see like, you know, a Roxy Blue video. Then after that, Assault Gang video. And then you would see, I remember seeing Soundgarden. And I was like, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought they were like a heavier rock band. Same thing with Alice in Chains. I was like, whoa, these guys are a lot heavier. I didn't think of that. Because they were like more of like, you know, they have more balls compared to like, say, Nirvana. And I have nothing against Nirvana, but I mean, you know, it was a lot more simple.
It's almost interesting you say that because it's like before the Seattle stuff, rock and metal, you obviously had your glam metal, you had your thrash metal, you had your heavy metal, and everything kind of just went alongside each other fine. Everything had its success. But when, like you say, when the grunge stuff came in, it's almost like the media just absorbed all that and just disregarded everything else. So perhaps if they'd have given exposure to everything could have moved along at the same time, really. It is interesting.
I know, it was very weird. Like if you were from that scene, after grunge really came in, it doesn't matter who you were. It's like those bands were all tainted. I mean, the one band that completely survived all that is, you know, Bon Jovi. And I mean, they even became bigger, you know, which is crazy.
One of the lightest, most pop metal bands there is the one that survived it.
Yeah, it's like, John was just very smart. He knew how to market that band and change with the times, you know? If you're looking at Bon Jovi, like These Days and Crush, like, you know, those were all great records, you know?
So what was the first band you actually got to meet?
It's a good question because it kind of all snowballed at once.
Was it like at a gig or was it like did you ever do like an in-store thing?
The first band that I met, like full-on band, was Extreme. And that was around Pornography era. And that was cool. They were all like super nice guys. That was an in-store. And then my second one, this is actually a good story. It was Spread Eagle. And it was at this club we had outside of Boston. And it was in a town or a city called Brockton, Massachusetts. And it was a club called Derringers, and all the bands would play there. And my dad brought me to see Spread Eagle. This is the weirdest part. The age limit was 12 plus with the Guardian. So you could see these bands. So this was in 92. So this would have been like a year after the Extreme. And I had gone to see Spread Eagle. And as a kid, you know, you don't really know any better. So I know the girl that was running the fan club, because I was in the Spread Eagle fan club. It's called Spread 'em Worldwide. So I found out where the dressing room was in the club. And here comes, you know, little old me as a kid. And I remember bringing their manager a box of chocolates. Because I didn't know any better. It's like I was just a kid. So the Spread Eagle guys were like so cool. You know, they totally embraced me as like a little kid. And I remember their guitar player, Paul, there's like a little instrumental piece on the first Spread Eagle album, and it's called 42nd Street. And he dedicated out to me when he was playing it. I was like, whoa, this is so cool, you know?
Your mind was blown, dude.
Yeah. So if you want to talk about like younger, like for club bands, Spread Eagle, they were like, you know, Bon Jovi was my like arena band. And then Spread Eagle was like my favorite, like, you know, club band. And then Tough and, you know, a zillion other bands that I love.
Alrighty. Scotty Dunbar, quick fire round. What other fan clubs were you in?
Oh, okay. Here we go.
You've already mentioned Tough and Spread Eagle.
So we got those down. Then I was in Backstage with Bon Jovi. Then I was in Slaughter International. And then trying to think. So we got Tough. That I was in Richie Sambora's. I think that Every Mother's Nightmare and Lillian Axe. Those were the ones.
Which was the best one? Because the Tough Muff Mania fan club was pretty damn good for keeping people up to date with regular newsletters. And a lot of them, you got the intro pack, then you never heard anything from them again.
Tough, like they put, yeah, exactly. That's how it was with some of the ones that I just mentioned. But the Tough one was great. Like, remember, you got that color folder and like all the pictures, and you would get like a birthday card.
I think you got guitar picks as well back then.
The guitar picks, yep. And you get the 8x10 photos, postcards, all that stuff. So I got to go with Tough, and then I have to go with Backstage with Bon Jovi, because like the newsletters were almost like magazines, and John Bon Jovi's mother, used to run the fan club. So it was personal. It was cool. And then I forgot Trickster. I was in the Trickster fan club.
How was that one?
That one was good. And you got to pick which member. They would send you a birthday card, and you would have to pick which member you wanted to send the birthday card.
Go on. Who was it?
Steve Brown, of course. So,
I love it, man. So let's say, in reflection as a fan, let's say the downsizing of the hard rock genre and bands heading more into clubs. I guess in kind of a way that must have been kind of cool for you, as it gave you more access to meet the bands, like to meet these guys who you loved. That's
what happened. I remember my first club show at 18 plus was Slaughter, and LA Guns opened, but it was when Ralph, now known as Michael Starr from Steel Panther, he was the lead singer for LA Guns at the time. They had released like an EP with him called Wasted, which was actually pretty good. So I had seen Slaughter with LA Guns, and that was at a place called Chantilly's, and that was up in Manchester, New Hampshire. So that would have been my first like 18 plus show. And then it was just, I went to a ton, and I think, especially Warrant, Rat had just gotten back together, and they were touring like the small clubs. This was like 96, 97, something like that.
How was you hearing about these shows? Was they getting some like local press coverage?
There was a newspaper that used to come out every week for free, and you could get it like at Tower Records, and it used to have a guide to what was going on in all the different clubs. And then of course Metal Edge had like the concert calendar. You would be able to find that out. So between Metal Edge and this newspaper called The Phoenix, which covered music in all the clubs, I just go into the directory and see who was playing. So those two, especially Metal Edge, only way I was finding out whether these bands were playing from that particular era, because like I said, you were heavy into the grunge scene about that time.
You getting your driver's license really opened things up for you and your friends, and you could travel everywhere to see shows. How far afield would you guys travel?
All over the place. You name it. Go down to New York to go see a show, and then just get back in time for work. One time I remember going down to New York, and the shows in New York City would start so late. And I had a job at the time where I was working in a warehouse, and I came back and I was late, and I got fired. So,
what show had you been to see, sorry?
I had gone to see Mike Tramp.
Was Mike Tramp worth getting fired for?
Of course it was.
Of course. I knew you was going to say that.
Yeah, because I remember that show, and that was actually the first time I met Mike Tramp. He had done that Tramp's White Lion. This was before he did that. And he came and he had like a solo band, and they were playing full electric shows. So I don't regret that. That was the first time, I met Mike Tramp, and, little did I know that years later, he would be the artist that I've, opened so many shows, dozens of shows for.
He's a good dude, man.
He's the best. He's, very level-headed and humble as can be.
Mm-hmm. Sweet, man. I want to talk a little about the night that would change your life, which was February the 20th, 2003 at the Station Club is it West Warwick, Rhode Island? Correct. How far is that from your home? Is that like somewhere you've been to before?
Yeah. I mean, that club, that was like one of, so around here in the city, Boston, they wouldn't take in any of these bands because, the clubs consider themselves too cool, quote unquote. But in the suburb areas, the clubs I went to, you had a club called Chantilly's, another club called Sharky's. Then there was the Station. And so the Station from here, like almost like an hour and a half, little less. I had gone down there a lot. I saw, Pretty Boy Floyd, Mike Tramp, Quiet Riot, Warrant, Sebastian Bach, and a couple others. But yeah, that was like, they were getting in all the bands that we loved.
Yeah.
I was very familiar with it. And I mean, every time I went there, I get lost. This was the days way before GPS. And remember MapQuest?
Yep.
Do you remember MapQuest? And you would print out the directions and they'd be like 35 pages long. And then you would have to like highlight certain things and then you would miss a step and then you'd be screwed.
Did you end up every time you went, you'd find it a different way? You'd get lost and you'd eventually stumble on
Yeah,
it.
pretty much. It's every single time I went there, I got lost. I would make a wrong turn. But yeah, so going to the station, I'd gone down with two of my good concert buddies, Derek Gray and Eugene, but we called them Gino Aviles. And Derek and I had met from going to like Warrant shows. That previous summer, it was the Metal Edge tour, which had Dawkins, Warrant, Rat, Firehouse on it.
That's like one of the greatest lineups of all time, right there.
Yeah. So it was great. So that's where Derek and I really started to talk. We had a mutual love for Butch Walker. He had just put out Left of Self-Centered. We were huge fans of that album because that had just come out around that time.
You knew a bunch of other people at the show that night as well, though, right? I guess it was a place where you'd see all these same people.
Yes, because that's the thing. It's like the fans like myself and friends, like when you have that passion, and you want to see your favorite bands and support them and just, rock out, distance doesn't matter. That don't mean nothing. So it's like you get in your car and you go.
I think I've heard quite a poignant story you've told. Is that whose car was it you drove in?
It was Gino's. Derek had come to my house earlier that day. We both got out of work early. We were waiting for Gino to get out. So I got in some new stuff off of eBay and Derek came over because he wanted to check out what I got, because I have a pretty big collection and and obviously when you're going back to the station, that was, 18 years ago. So you have a lot more stuff now. So he had come over and then we went over to Gino's. I don't know why I didn't drive because I usually used to like to just drive to everything. But anyways, we took Gino's car. And when we were going down there, we had plans to go to a couple record stores that were in that area. Like they had the thing for this area was a record store called Strawberries. They have the Newberry Comics and stuff. So we wanted to hit up some of those stores. But we got stuck in some really bad traffic. And my friend Gino, I don't know if you remember, but in order to listen to a CD, you would have to flip in like this cassette that had like a wire attachment. So he had that. And I remember we were just like listening to, I remember one of the albums was Enough's Enough. I think it was Welcome to Blue Island.
Yeah.
That had just come out like the year before or something like that. We listened to all kinds of stuff, but then it stopped working.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight, it was a good thing because we just got to talk instead of having the music blasting. I mean, when it happened, we're like, oh,
this is the worst.
It's like, this is horrible.
We got to talk to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
We already know everything about each other.
Exactly. Now looking back, it's like, I'm thankful that happened,
Yeah. There's footage of you and your friends all on the front row of the show, which is unreal to watch when you know what is about to unfold. Everyone was just there to have, you can just see everyone's out there just to have the greatest night. There's just so much freaking joy, dude. Did you realize pretty much immediately that the fire wasn't part of the show and things weren't quite right?
Going back a little bit, we wanted to make sure we got a good spot. Derek and I were just excited that, Mark Kendall was back with Jack doing these shows. So because previous in the fall, because the fire happened in February 2003. So around October and November 2002, Jack was out doing some solo shows where he was playing his new album at the time called For You. So when he went out as Great White, Mark Kendall came back into the picture. So we knew we were going to hear a ton of classic Great White.
Yeah.
We were excited.
It was a big deal for you guys.
Yeah, being huge fans of the band. So we were in the front row and we were there for a while. I remember an opening band called Trip they actually were sharing the same tour bus as Great White. They were signed to the same label, which was called Night Records, and they were great. So that band was for over 100 people. It would be like the last band that they ever saw, alive. As you have mentioned about that video footage that, that's everywhere. The crazy thing about that was that stuff was shot for a video about club safety. I mean, what are the odds of that? You have all the, those front row things that were all over the news. And then my buddy Derek, he was very tall, curly blonde hair, purple bandana. So he's very easy to make out. Gino and I were, I was to one side of Derek, Gino was to the other. So you were asking when that started if I thought it was part of the show. And, when the pyro first came out, I was like, wow. I was like, all right.
That was full on.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And then it caught so fast. And it spread and spread and spread. And so my friends and I, even though we were right next to each other, we got separated like immediately. I had turned around, started moving towards the back, and then they had turned the other way and then started walking towards the windows. So it was absolute insanity.
Did everything move fast for you, or did it just seem like a lifetime?
You know what? You basically had a couple minutes, not even, to get out of that building. But those couple minutes seemed like eternity.
Yeah.
Because it was so dark and the fire was spreading up with all the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It was just coming full force. I had tripped because a bunch of people have fallen, and I was, laid down flat on the floor. I had these new pair of boots that I bought, and they were way too big for me. And it ends up being that those boots were a lifesaver because I was able to slide out of the boots and make my way up. Basically, you couldn't see anybody, because it was just so dark from that black smoke. And there was a light that, like a street light or whatever the hell it was, that was shining through one of these windows. And the window had been broken. So somebody must have been out it before or whatever. And so I just dove out the window and I ended up on a snowbank in the parking lot.
Unreal, man. Unreal. Do you remember what you were feeling once you got out? Was it just chaos, or was it almost, I don't want to say silence, but was just everybody in shock outside? Like, can't believe what's happening.
When I got outside, even when I was in the building, like I heard things that you couldn't even put into like a horror movie for the most part, stuff that stuck with me to this day. But when I got out, I just remember just being, in that snow. And I went over to where Gino's car was and just looking at the building, like completely engulfed by that point. And I just remember saying to myself, even though it was probably too early to do, but I just had a sick feeling in my stomach. I'm like, I don't think they made it out, because I was standing by the car. It seemed like eternity, but it really wasn't that long. And then because I was cut up and had no shoes and all that stuff, cut from all the glass all over me, a paramedic had brought me over across the street. There was like this restaurant that they were using as a center to bring all the people in. It was called the Cohesion Inn, and that was right across the street. But then I was transported to the hospital, by ambulance. They took care of me there and all that stuff. And then I was, released very early the next morning. I was very lucky.
There was 462 people in that club.
Yeah.
100 of them died, including your friends Derek and Gino, and also a member of the band, Great White, the guitarist, Ty Longley.
Yep.
When did you find out that Derek and Gino had lost their lives? Was it that night or was it the next day?
Okay, so I had come home, there was all that stuff. And I remember waking up. The TV was on in the other room. And, like I had said, I had a bad feeling about Derek and Gino just by waiting for that car. But that next morning, I just remember hearing the TV and the count was pretty high. And I was like, what? And then it just kept getting higher and higher. And against what other people thought I should do, I had gone down to the site to see if I could get any information. And they were holding, like information like for the families and stuff at this hotel. And you went to the hotel and it was basically like they would be like the family of so-and-so, and then take that person's, the family, whatever, into a room. You would hear like screaming and crying or, stuff like that. I knew by that point, and then a couple days later afterwards, they were identified and stuff as, being deceased.
How do you take steps from moving forward from something like that? It's going to be something you carry with you for the rest of your life. Did you have to speak to people, like counseling and stuff like that? Was that part of the progress?
Yeah, I went to several of them, and I thought they were all I was never into that stuff.
No, just had to find your own way of figuring it out.
I convinced myself I wasn't into it, and then finally I found somebody that I could relate to. But then again, I was my own worst enemy. Over the years, in order to deal with that, I was never a heavy drinker or into anything like that. Like I'd be your typical, growing up, like I was your typical teenager, like have some beers, pretend to get drunk so your friends think you're cool because you got like a buzz on.
Yeah.
I was never like a heavy drinker. And then, after that is when I started buying booze, and kept getting worse year after year after year. And then I would say about, 4 years afterwards, 5 years afterwards, that's where I was using substances and alcohol and all that. And it just got really bad. I got myself into a lot of trouble with the law, trouble with everything, holding down jobs, friendships, all that. But yeah, I had to hit rock bottom, and I hit rock bottom, I would say this 2013, 10 years afterwards. I was just self-medicating, and it just got up to me. And, like I said, I hit rock bottom and I decided to get clean.
And how long have you been clean now? Because it's an incredible amount of time.
Yeah, this past March 9th, I celebrated 9 years, completely clean, sober. When I was getting, clean, after that, I was able to deal with all the stuff that I just repressed, And I did that by nursing myself with a bottle and drugs. So,
how long was it before you could actually go to another show?
Okay, so a month later, we had my best friend growing up, and still friends. Is my only friend that I've kept, because when you're in school and stuff, everyone kind of goes their separate ways. You grow up, everyone has different priorities, no falling outs or anything. So one of those friends that I managed to keep, best friend Brandon Hugh, he had become a firefighter, and I had tickets for Bon Jovi. And at first, after the fire, I gave them back because I didn't think I'd be ready, because it was like almost a month after or so. And I thought for sure I wouldn't be. But as it kept getting closer, I was like, they're my favorite band. Am I just going to sit in my house and just start knitting blankets or something, or, going crazy, or am I going to go? So anyways, I bought tickets again, and I went with Brandon. He's like, yep, if you're sure you want to do this, I'm going to take you. We're going to go. Of course it was a little different because Bon Jovi's like in an arena or something, but
it's still making that step.
Yeah. And so that step was a massive step for me. And it just, people always ask me what my favorite show is or something like that. And it's got to be that one, just because of this, the sentimental value to that and how big that was for me personally. With a lot of Bon Jovi's lyrics and stuff, they were always on the positive side.
Yeah.
That just did something to me that night. And I was like, this is what I do. I go to shows, I play shows. It's this is my life. It's I've given up and tossed aside anything else that I did, whether it be sports, college, what I dropped out of, because music was the thing for me. It's my life. It's the thing I know. And that's what I did.
It's like your passion for music's continued so strong after such a devastating event and loss. It's like, is it almost like a way of honouring your friends in a way to continue to do what you all love to do together, really? It's a really nice way to continue that as well, in memory of them as well, in a way.
Absolutely.
They'd want you to do it.
Yeah, because exactly. So like if the shoe was on the other foot, like, and if they weren't going to shows and stuff, like I would come down and kick their ass, That's the thing I know. And I've given my life to rock and roll.
I'm going to dive forward a little bit to another night that changed your life.
Yeah.
Which was July the 3rd, 2006.
Oh, yes. I remember that.
That's the night you met me, brother.
Absolutely. I remember that was on the Metal Sludge tour. And it was you guys, Teenage Casket Company, Veins Agenda, Tough, and the Erotics were on there, right?
I'll tell you what I remember about that night.
Yeah.
I remember you had your Tough dog tag, which I think you got Stevie Rochelle to sign.
Yeah, I had him sign it, yeah.
And you gave me props for wearing my Mike Fasano Total Poser shirt.
Oh, yes.
That was our first conversation.
Oh, my God, I totally forgot how Mike used to have, like, the Total Poser line. I remember talking to you at the back of the bar, like after your set, you and Rob Wild, and we're just talking about, 80s rock bands like Danger Danger and Trickster and Kiss,
We met soulmates that night, mate.
Oh, yeah, we did. And then I came and saw you, like, I think it was like a couple days later, you were outside of the Boston area.
It was the next night. It was July the 4th.
Oh, yes, that's right. It was the 4th of July. So I remember coming out to that. And then we just hit it off and we all, became friends. And it was a couple months later that I found myself over in Nottingham, England.
Yeah, insane, man. Insane.
You took me to some great record shops over there. Wow.
What we did, we saw Winger as well.
Yes, that's right. Firefest. That was awesome. And Winger was so good that night. That was amazing. Yeah, I always had wanted to go to a Firefest, and you had taken me. That was so cool.
All the best, mate. It's great. So I guess music, it's helped you so much. I guess it was a massive part of your healing process. But
yeah,
you began recording music as well. Had you ever seen that as something you wanted to do? I know you took guitar lessons when you were really young and stuff, but did you just need like a new challenge and a focus? And you just thought, screw it, I've got nothing to lose. I need to dive into something which I truly love doing.
Well, when I was younger, I had bands. We play like the local talent show, and I was like the guitar player at the time. After that, like I was in another band called 2217, and then the fire had happened, and I put all that stuff on hold. A couple of years passed, and then I started doing stuff again. And I started like with like a local band, just, playing out, doing some covers and stuff. Then I put another original band together, and that lasted for a while. But then I started recording. I put out a few things like in 2003, 4, but then it was like 2010, I put out like my first solo release. That was through the Warrant guys, like Jerry Dixon and Eric Turner had started like an independent label called Down Boys Records. So I put out a solo EP with them, and then about like 3 different singles with them. And I was never comfortable just going by my name. It was more like one of those things where it's like, the more I can do, the better. But that first solo EP was kind of weird because it was like pop. It had duets with me and like this singer called AMJ. She's like a pop singer, and then stuff like that. So it was definitely not hard rock. Then I had started my band DMK. I had met the guys. I had done a solo acoustic tour up and down the East Coast with Eric Martin from Mr. Big. And that's where I met my drummer, Brian. And then I had met Ted playing solo shows. We were on the same bills together. It was kind of hard to see how it was going to work because you had Ted that lived in Maryland. You had Brian at the time that lived in Long Island, New York. And then you had me that was in Boston. and you know how it is, like with forming a band and stuff,
But you guys made it work, and how was it for you getting the chance to play on the Sunset Strip, playing the Whiskey A Go-Go? We're opening up for your heroes as well.
I had played there solo once, but then going with DMK and just having a real tight band instead of my, sloppy ass, like, and having guys that know how to play. I mean, dude, it was awesome. It was amazing. It's like, and that's the thing. And I'm sure you can agree with this. It's like, you have posters of these guys like all over the place. And you're going out there, you're basically making like not even a penny. It's like you're doing it because of the passion. And so that was great, And with the band DMK, we were very active as far as releasing stuff. We released an EP, and then we released like 4 or 5 singles all within like, a year and a half. We were in the studio a lot. We worked with Mark Slaughter on a couple of our songs, and then we worked with Peter Vick from Bret Michaels' band, because Pete was a great guy. He was like an early champion of the band. He got us on some of Bret Michaels' shows. So it's like opening for Bret was just amazing,
Job done. We did it, guys.
Yeah, well, and the first Bret Michaels show that we opened for, I had mentioned this earlier, but it was at the Hampton Beach Casino, and that's the one that I was telling you that was on the beach.
How cool is that you got to do that?
It's my favorite venue of all time. Bret has sold out the show that night, and the place holds about like close to 2,000. So it was amazing,
Dream come true.
Yeah, my friends and my family were there, so we got to do some cool stuff,
Most importantly, I just love the journey you've been on. You've gone through the lowest of lows, which I wouldn't wish on anybody, but the way you've pulled yourself up and you're sober after all this time, you've dealt with all this stuff, and you've just gone on, you've thought, I'm going to do what I love, screw everybody else, I'm going to do it because I love it so much, and you've been successful at it, and you're in a good place today. At least I hope you are. Everything's going great.
Exactly. And you're the same way, bro. It's like, you have that passion and that drive. It's like from, your music, back when you used to do the Trash Pit Records, a magazine, just all the stuff you do. And now your podcast. It's like, I love people like you. You do something because you love it.
Exactly. That's why we all do it. It's why you've got to do it, mate. It's why you do it.
Yeah.
Meeting you guys that night in 2006, it's like, yes, I've met my people.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy thinking how long ago that was now?
It seems like 5 minutes to me, mate. I tell you.
Yeah. It's like time just flies by so fast. And it's like, that was the great times, memories that, that will live with me forever.
I've loved catching up with you. We'll have to do it more regular, set up a date.
Yeah, it was great catching up with you. I'm sorry you have to see me in my pajamas. So anytime you want to shoot the shit, just let me know. I'm around.
Alrighty. Well, you take care, dude.
All right. Love you, brother.
Love you too, mate. See you soon.
You take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you to my friend Scotty Dunbar for sharing some stories about his journey with me here on the Straight to Video podcast. It really was a joy for me to catch up, and it means a lot to me for him to share such tough events, but also put so much love and positivity for music out there in the world. I hope you all enjoyed it too. Please hit up Scotty through Facebook or on Instagram at Scotty Dunbar. A documentary about the events of the Station Club fire is to be released soon called The Guest List, and it speaks about the tragic events back in 2003, but also the road to recovery for a lot of the music fans who were there. You can visit theguestlistfilm.com for the trailer and more information on all of that. Cheers to everyone for some great feedback recently about the past few interviews. I'm stoked you've been enjoying them, and I hope to keep bringing you some more great names over the coming weeks. Be sure to stay up to date at stvpod.com, and please check out the music and videos on there too. And if you'd like a straight to video t-shirt, there's a merch page where you can grab one of those. So until I speak to you all again, I've been your host Rob Lane. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll do it all again soon.